Hi guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be discussing the difference between disinflation and deflation. Now guys, you all know what inflation is. Inflation is basically a persistent increase in the general level of prices over a given period of time in a year, right? Now when we talk about inflation, there are two more things that we need to know when studying inflation, that is disinflation and deflation. So for example, let's say I've given the inflation rates over here, which is also representing the percentage change in CPI, which is your consumer price index. We all know what index numbers are, and basically CPI is used to measure inflation. So let's say that the index of year 0 is basically 100, while the index of year 1 is 104. So if you want to calculate, so if the index is given to you, let's say the index in year 0 is 100, while the index in year 1 is 104, and if you want to calculate the rate of inflation, so what you'll do is that you'll deduct the new index with the old index and divided by the old index times 100. That is new index, which is 104, minus the old index, that is the index of the previous year, and previous year in our example right now is the base year, divided by the previous year index, that is 100, times 100 because you're calculating the percentage right now. So this would be 4 upon 100 times 100, and the answer is 4%. So 4% is basically the rate of inflation in year 1, and that is exactly what I have calculated over here as well, that the rate of inflation in year 1 is, let's say, 4%, right? Now basically, so let's say that in year 1 the inflation was 4%, while in year 2 it's 5%, in year 3 it's 2%, while in year 4 it is minus 1%. Now guys, you need to understand that within these given rates there are two important concepts that are hidden within these, that we are going to grasp from these rates of inflation, and that is the concept of disinflation versus deflation. Now guys, first of all, remember that when you talk about disinflation is just a fall in the rate of inflation, while deflation represents falling price level. It means negative inflation. So disinflation means fall in the rate of inflation, and inflation is an increase in the price level. So when you talk about fall in the rate of inflation, it means that prices are rising at a decreasing rate. The rate is going down, the prices are not going down. But when you talk about deflation, we're talking about prices going down, because in deflation the inflation rate is actually negative. So let's say in year 1 the inflation rate was 4%, while in year 2 it was 5%, while in year 3 let's say it dropped to 2%, and year 4 it was negative 1%. So if you look at year 1 to year from year 1 to year 2, in year 1 the prices rose by 4%, while in year 2 the prices were rising by 5%, right? So obviously we can see that, from year 1 to year 2 there is an accelerating or an increasing inflation rate or a rising inflation rate. In year 2 prices are rising, but it is rising at an increasing rate. So we have a rising rate of inflation, or an accelerating, let's say, rate of inflation. But in year 3 we do have a rate of inflation, because prices are rising in year 3 as well, because here prices are rising by 2%, but the rate has gone down. That is, in year 2 they were rising by 5%, but in year 3 they are now rising by they're rising by 2%. So year 3 there is disinflation. Disinflation means there is inflation, prices are rising but at a falling rate, and that is exactly what I've written over here as well, that in year 2 basically prices are rising by 5% from 4% in year 1, which means that inflation rates are basically rising in year 2, while in year 3 what happens is that inflation rate is 2%, which simply means that prices are rising, but they are rising slowly than before. One way to put it forward is that they are rising slowly than before, or another thing that you can write is, or the rate at which they are rising has gone down. That is the rate of the increase, because inflation is the increase in price level, right? Inflation is basically the increase in price level. So the rate at which they were rising has gone down, but the prices has not gone down. Only the rate at which they were rising has gone down. So things are still getting expensive, but the rate at which they were getting expensive is going down. But that doesn't mean that they're getting cheaper. Things are not getting cheaper. The rate at which they're getting expensive is going down. Okay. So this is basically called disinflation. And this does not mean that prices are falling at all. Remember that. So it means that prices are rising at a decreasing rate. Simply remember. And one more thing you need to know is that whenever inflation is positive, there is always an increase in price. Remember that. If inflation is positive, there is always an increase in price. And the cost of living is always rising. So a lot of people think that in year 3, things are getting cheaper. No, things are not getting cheaper in year 3. Things are getting expensive, and the cost of living is rising as well, right? However, in year 4, so in year 3, we have disinflation, right? We have disinflation, that is inflation at a declining rate. And in year 4, we have basically deflation, because here the rate of inflation is negative. So whenever the inflation rate will be negative, it means that prices are falling now, which is deflation. So deflation is basically a fall in the general price level. When you talk about the word deflation, it deflates, it means the price level deflates, it means that it goes down, Deflation means a fall in the general price level, right? And this means that prices are falling in the economy. So whenever the rate of inflation, it's the opposite of inflation. Whenever the rate of inflation will be negative, it means that there is deflation in the economy. Okay. So in year 4, you have deflation. It means prices are falling. It means things are getting cheaper. Okay. So for example, I've drawn a graph here. The reason why I've drawn a graph here, and I've tried to cover it in this video, it's not a graph actually, it's a sort of a trend line. The reason I've drawn that is because because these kind of questions and these trend lines do come in case studies. And what happens is that a lot of people then do the wrong analysis of inflation. So if you see, on the y-axis, we have given inflation rate, that is the percentage, change in CPI index is the inflation rate basically. But I've not mentioned the values, I've just written plus and minus. So plus simply means rise, from this area to this area. All of this area is representing inflation, while all of this area is representing deflation, right? So negative inflation is deflation basically. Now, if you see that from 2005 up till 2007, inflation has been going up. It means that there has been rising inflation, right? Which means that the rate at which the prices were rising has also been going up. So you have rising inflation or accelerating inflation, you could say. So inflation is basically going up, right? Inflation is rising, basically. You need to know that. But beyond 2007, you can see after 2007, basically, there has been disinflation, which means that the rate at which the prices were rising has been going down. So, a lot of people do the wrong analysis here. They say that prices are falling because they see a downward line, they see a line that is going down. So they say that prices are falling and things are getting cheaper. But that is wrong. Why? Because on the y-axis, you're measuring inflation rate. And unless this line is going down, it's still in the positive region. It's still in the positive region. It's not in the negative region. It's still in the positive region. So that means that your inflation rate is still positive, even though it's declining, but it's still positive. It still means that prices are rising because it's the inflation rate, and inflation is prices. Inflation is the rise in price level basically. So if the rate of inflation is going down, it simply means that there is disinflation. So from this region up till 2010, there has been disinflation throughout, right? Disinflation. And from 2010 onwards, beyond 2010 onwards, basically, what happened was that after 2010, from 2010 onwards, basically deflation kicked in. Prices started falling. That's exactly what I've written over here as well, that from 2005 to 2009, prices were rising. 2005 to 2009, prices were rising. We had inflation. From 2005 to 2007, inflation rate was rising as well, right? And after 2007, the inflation rate fell. There was disinflation. After 2007, there was disinflation up till 2010, right? There was disinflation, but still remember that there was disinflation. It doesn't mean that the prices were rising. Don't think that this decline is representing a fall in prices. Don't think that. This was very important for you guys to know, right? So still the prices were rising, but they were rising at a decreasing rate. It's fine if they're rising at a decreasing rate, still they are rising. So still we have inflation. That is, prices were rising by a smaller and smaller amount each year, right? But 2010 onwards, we had deflation. So deflation is always negative inflation. So you need to know that. And this analysis is very important because a lot of students do mess up, these kind of things in their case studies. So that's it, guys. I hope you understood the concept. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, take care.